At a grand anniversary gala we were invited to, my wife twirled across the dance floor with her so-called closest friend all night long. Not once did her eyes seek mine. Not once did she take my hand. When someone leaned in and asked if she was married, she gave a smirk, let out a sharp laugh, and replied, "Not exactly." "It doesn't count if the man is dull." Her words sliced through the air like broken glass. Everyone chuckled. I didn't. I stood there, silent, watching the last threads of my marriage snap in real time. By morning, she woke in an empty bed. I wasn't there anymore. My marriage didn't end in flames or screaming battles. No shattered plates. No raised fists. It ended with a smirk. With her laugh, plastic, cruel, echoing inside a chandelier-lit ballroom, and in that laugh, I heard everything I had refused to admit for too long. Let me backtrack. I'm Daniel. She's Chloe, my ex-wife now, though only last week she was still my everything. We had been married 4 years. From the outside, life looked picture-perfect. A charming house in a leafy neighborhood, a pair of nice cars, vacations when we felt like it. But that facade was just paint over rotten wood. The truth had been creeping in, a slow leak corroding the foundation. And at the center of that truth was Liam. Liam, her best friend, the brother she never had. I tolerated it at first. For the first couple of years I swallowed my doubts and convinced myself their closeness was harmless nostalgia. That's what she always said. We go way back. You've got nothing to worry about. And for a while I wanted to believe it. But then something shifted. After we got married, Chloe seemed to change. Her respect for me started shrinking just as her self-importance grew. The more she fed her ego, the less room she left for us. The warning signs were everywhere. Little red flags turned into screaming banners waving inches from my face. Constant texting at the dinner table, her screen always tilted away from me. Jokes that compared my decisions to what Liam would have done. She turned his name into a constant echo in our house, as if she couldn't breathe without dragging him into every conversation. The breaking point wasn't the gala. It came months earlier, when I planned something I thought would revive us. Our anniversary trip. I spent weeks researching a quiet lodge in the mountains, a retreat to reconnect, away from noise, away from everyone else. I showed her the pictures, expecting that old spark in her eyes. Instead, she frowned. She said it looked a little plain. The next day, she strutted in with a new plan. Liam had suggested a flashy resort by the coast. She already booked it. I didn't even get a vote. My idea, my effort, erased with a single word from him. And so, we went to the resort. 4 days of her lounging by the pool, laughing at her phone, snapping photos and sending them straight to Liam. Not to me, to him. That's when I realized I wasn't a partner. I was scaffolding, a structure holding up the life she wanted to build around someone else. I was the man who paid the bills while she invested her attention in another. That night, staring at the ceiling of the hotel room, I made my choice. I wasn't going to fight for scraps of respect anymore. I wasn't going to shout or throw ultimatums. I was going to plan. Quietly. Strategically. The very next week, I met with a lawyer. 90 minutes in a small office, talking through my rights, my options, my exit strategy. The house was mine. I had bought it before I even knew Chloe existed. That was secure. But the lawyer gave me precise instructions on protecting the rest. I opened new bank accounts. Different bank, different cards. I started funneling most of my income there, leaving just enough in our joint account to keep the illusion alive. I wasn't starving her. I was laying the groundwork. Piece by piece, brick by brick, I was building a door out of this cage. And then came the gala. Her college friend's extravagant anniversary party. The ballroom glimmered with chandeliers, waiters carried trays of champagne, and Chloe was in her element. She wore a gown she'd bragged about buying with our joint card, the price tag higher than some people's rent. And she spent the entire evening latched onto Liam's arm, their laughter ringing through the room like they owned it. I didn't argue. I didn't beg for her attention. I stood back, a quiet observer, waiting for confirmation of what I already knew. And around 10 p.m., it arrived. She was clustered with Liam and a group of strangers near the bar. Someone noticed her ring, asked if she was married. It was the easiest question in the world. All she had to do was point to me, the man standing just a few feet away. But instead she smirked, tossed her head back, and performed. "Oh, I'm married, but not to Liam, unfortunately," she said with mock disappointment. Then she leaned forward, lowered her voice, but not enough. "Not really married anyway." It doesn't count if he's boring." The laughter that followed was sharp, mocking, and it hollowed me out. But there was no rage, no shattered glass in my chest, just silence, cold, clear certainty. She had spelled it out for me in front of strangers. I wasn't a husband. I was a joke. I didn't confront her. I didn't storm out. I simply gave her a nod across the room. A nod that, to her, might have seemed like acknowledgement. But it wasn't. It was acceptance. Confirmation received. Game over. I turned, walked out of the ballroom, and went to our hotel room. I didn't pack in anger. I packed with precision. Every fold of a shirt, every zip of the suitcase was part of a plan I had been rehearsing for months. The first thing I did was slide off my wedding ring and set it on the dresser. It didn't feel like taking off jewelry. It felt like taking off a mask I'd worn too long. I checked out, carried my bag to the car, and drove home in silence. 40 minutes of pure, unbroken peace. For the first time in a year, I felt free. When I pulled into the driveway of my house, the house that had always been mine, I knew exactly what to do next. The first step was securing the fortress. I walked straight into the kitchen, tapped on the smart home panel, and erased her profile with 2 clicks. Her access code vanished. Her key fob became useless plastic. Then I went to the garage and reset the manual entry code. In less than 5 minutes, Chloe was no longer a resident of this home. She was just another outsider. Next came the financial tether. I logged into the joint account, the one she treated like her personal allowance. There were only a few thousand left, enough for her car payment, her endless brunches, and whatever overpriced nonsense Liam had convinced her to buy. I transferred it all into my new account. Then I moved to the credit cards. She had her own supplementary card, which she used like it was her birthright. Recent charges glared at me. The gala dress, a spa session with Liam's sister, a suitcase for a trip she was planning with friends. With a few keystrokes, I reported her card as stolen. The account froze instantly. Her tap-to-pay world had just gone dark. The hardest part was the purge. In the garage, waiting for months, were flat-packed moving boxes. I'd bought them quietly, knowing this moment would come. One by one, I filled them. Clothes, shoes, jewelry, makeup, her curated workspace, every bottle of expensive serum lined like soldiers on the vanity. Gone. The process was clinical. I wasn't reminiscing. I wasn't grieving. I was an estate manager clearing the remnants of someone who no longer lived here. By the time dawn touched the blinds, 42 boxes stood stacked in the garage. My house was lighter, cleaner. Mine again. At 3 a.m., I sat at my desk, typed a 2-word email to my lawyer, file it, and hit send. Then, for the first time in a long time, I slept deeply, without dreams. The morning brought chaos. At first, she called like nothing was wrong. Cheerful voice, assuming I'd gone to work early. I ignored it. An hour later, panic seeped in. Her card had been declined when she tried to cover breakfast for her and Liam. The calls multiplied. By the third one, her voice was shrill, furious. She was on the porch, banging at the door. "Daniel, open this door right now. My key isn't working. What the hell is going on?" I answered, calm as ice. "I know." "What do you mean you know?" "Stop playing games and let me in." "No," I said, flat, final. She screamed that I was being cruel, that this wasn't funny. I cut her off. "I heard you last night, Chloe. I heard you tell everyone our marriage doesn't count because I'm boring. So let's fix that. Consider this the most exciting thing I've ever done. You're free now, free of the boring husband, and free of his boring house." She tried to backpedal. "It was a joke. I didn't mean it. You misunderstood." But her excuses hit the air like cheap fireworks, brief and pathetic. "All your things are in the garage, 42 boxes. Movers will take them to a storage unit tomorrow. 3 months paid. After that, it's your problem. The joint account is empty. The credit card's canceled. Divorce papers will arrive Monday." Her voice cracked, dripping disbelief. "You can't do this." "I already did," she sobbed. Liam's voice chimed in from behind her, telling her I was bluffing, that I was being dramatic. Her knight in shining armor, standing there with nothing but words. "Have a nice life," I said, and hung up. Then I blocked both their numbers. Phase 1. Complete. But people like Chloe and Liam don't vanish quietly. They need an audience. They need to twist the story until they're the heroes and I'm the monster. Within hours, whispers started. I was controlling, jealous, unhinged. The rumor was that I'd snapped at the gala, imagined everything, and thrown her out in a fit of rage. It was a neat narrative. Some bought it. The first blow landed through Chloe's mother. A voicemail, dripping guilt. She called me cruel, said her daughter was broken, begged me to be a man and fix the marriage. I didn't respond, but I saved it. Evidence. Texts followed. Friends of Chloe's, parroting her script. You're abusive. You'll regret this. Everyone knows what you did. They thought they were isolating me. They didn't realize I'd already isolated them from my life. What I needed was proof. Hard, undeniable evidence. And I knew where to get it. At events like these, there's always a camera. Not just the hired videographer, the guests. And no one records more obsessively than a teenager. I thought of Maya, the bride's younger cousin, her phone practically welded to her hand that night. I found her Instagram, sent her a friendly message. I'm putting together a little memory collection for the couple. Do you mind sharing your clips? She agreed instantly. Within an hour, I had a link to dozens of videos. I sifted through them, moment by moment, until I found it. The silver bullet. A shot of the dance floor. Nothing special. But in the background, clear as crystal. Chloe's laugh, high and fake. And then her voice, word for word. Not really married anyway. It doesn't count if he's boring. I clipped 10 seconds. I didn't post it publicly. No, this wasn't about humiliation. It was about precision. I drafted a group text. Recipients. The bride and groom, Chloe's parents, her sister, and Liam's long-term girlfriend, Emily. Yes, he had a girlfriend. I'd met her at dinner once. Quiet, kind, undeserving of all this. My message was short. I know you've been hearing a lot of stories. This is the truth. The audio matters most. This is why my marriage is over. I attached the clip and pressed send. Then I left my phone on silent and went for a walk. The world could watch the truth unravel on its own. Her explanation was like a puzzle with missing pieces. She described him as her unfinished chapter, a metaphor that grated against the life I thought we were writing together. She said she couldn't move into the next stage of her life with me until she had properly closed the last one with him. I felt as though I was standing on a stage, the audience waiting, while the script I memorized so carefully was suddenly rewritten mid-performance. My fiancée insisted that she loved me, that her future was still with me, but she needed this meeting. She used words like closure and clarity, but all I could hear was that she was willing to risk our bond for the ghost of a past love. I tried to argue, to reason with her. Why now? Why, after engagement rings and vows half written in notebooks, after families had already started planning, after I had staked my heart on her? She only shook her head, eyes glistening, saying that if she didn't do this now, she would always wonder. That word, wonder, became a dagger. I realized in that moment that no matter how deeply I loved her, I could never compete with the imagined, with the phantom possibility of what if. She wasn't asking me for permission. She was informing me of a decision already made. When she finally left that evening, the air in my apartment seemed to collapse. Her perfume lingered like a haunting, reminding me of a closeness that now felt foreign. I sat alone, staring at the walls that had heard our laughter, seen our plans unfold. The silence pressed against me until it became unbearable. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I replayed our conversations from the past, searching for signs, for cracks I might have overlooked. I remembered the way her smile sometimes faded when old songs played on the radio, the subtle hesitation when we talked about the future. Had this unfinished business always been shadowing us, waiting for the worst moment to step forward? The following days were a blur. She was gone often, sometimes unreachable, sometimes curt when I called. My friends noticed the change in me. They asked if everything was okay, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. How do you tell people that the person you love is still tethered to someone else? Finally, a week later, she told me she had met him. The words fell into the room like stones in water, rippling through everything I thought was stable. She said they talked for hours, that it was emotional, but necessary. She assured me that it only proved to her how much she wanted to marry me. But her eyes betrayed her. They didn't have the steady certainty of someone who had found peace. They had the restless glint of someone still divided, still balancing between two worlds. I listened, nodded, even forced a smile, but inside, I was unraveling. Love, I realized, wasn't enough if it had to share space with someone else's ghost. That night, I couldn't stay in the apartment. The walls felt too tight, the air too heavy with everything left unsaid. I grabbed my jacket and walked, no destination in mind, just the rhythm of my footsteps carrying me farther from her and from the life we had been building. The city was alive around me, cars honking, people laughing outside bars, couples holding hands. But I felt detached, as though I was drifting through someone else's world. My own had shrunk to the size of a phone screen flashing her name and the constant loop of doubts playing in my mind. Hours later, when I returned, she was asleep on the couch, the wedding invitations still scattered across the table. I stood there, looking at her. She looked so peaceful, as if none of this turmoil existed within her. But I knew better. Peace on the outside didn't erase storms inside. The following morning, I made coffee, sat across from her, and asked the question that had been clawing at me. Do you really love me? Or do you just love the idea of us? She froze, her hands wrapped around the mug like it could shield her from the weight of my words. After what felt like an eternity, she whispered, I do love you. But I don't know if it's enough right now. That was it. The confession I had feared and expected all at once. It wasn't anger that hit me, but a strange calm. Because finally, the truth was on the table. In that quiet kitchen with the smell of coffee hanging in the air, I realized that the future I thought was certain had crumbled. And maybe that was better than living a lie, clinging to a love that wasn't whole. We postponed the wedding. Families asked questions, friends speculated, but I had no energy left to explain. All I knew was that we couldn't walk into a marriage with this fracture at the center of it. Weeks passed, and she moved out. She said it was temporary, just to clear her head, but deep down I knew temporary solutions rarely lead to permanent fixes. Each day without her in the apartment made it feel less like ours and more like mine again. And slowly I began to breathe. It wasn't easy. Nights were long, mornings were heavy. I missed her, missed the comfort of believing in us. But with each passing day, I started to see more clearly. I started to remember who I was before I was hers, before my identity was tied to being someone's fiancé. And in that clarity, I learned something. Love that requires constant convincing isn't love that can endure. One evening, I sat with a close friend and told him everything. The text, the meetings, the doubts. He listened quietly, then said, Sometimes, closure isn't something you wait for someone else to give you. Sometimes closure is the moment you decide to stop bleeding for people who don't know how to stop cutting. Those words stayed with me. They became a reminder that I didn't need her to choose me to be whole. Months slipped by. The seasons shifted, and with them, so did I. At first, the emptiness felt unbearable, like walking into a home that no longer recognized me, but slowly, the silence became less hostile. It turned into space, into breathing room. I started running in the mornings, letting the pounding of my feet on the pavement drown out the echoes of what-ifs. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned, filled shelves with books I actually had time to read, and met friends without constantly checking my phone. And though I didn't admit it right away, I felt lighter. Every once in a while she would reach out, text that said she was thinking of me, that she missed me, that she was sorry for everything. I didn't hate her for it. I knew she meant it, at least in the moment she sent them. But I also knew I couldn't keep opening the same door just to find the same storm inside. One evening, I revisited the box where I had kept our engagement ring. For months, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. But that night, I opened it and stared at the glint of metal and stone that once symbolized forever. It no longer made me ache the way it used to. Instead, it made me think about promises, how fragile they are, how easily broken when one person isn't ready to keep them. I realized then that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even resentful. What I felt was gratitude, strange as that sounded, because her hesitation, her unfinished chapter, forced me to face truths I might have ignored until it was too late. I understood that love isn't just about grand gestures and whispered promises. It's about certainty, about two people choosing each other fully and without condition. Anything less is just a waiting game for heartbreak. That clarity became my closure. Not her explanations, not her apologies, not even her absence. My closure was choosing myself, choosing to walk forward without needing someone else's permission to heal. And as I stood on my balcony one night, city lights stretching out before me, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that love would find me again, but this time, it would be whole. This time, it wouldn't ask me to compete with ghosts. This time, it would feel like home, not like a puzzle missing pieces. Her chapter in my life was over, and mine was just beginning.